Welcome to the fall of 2021 info session for the application to the professional nursing major. We will answer your questions as we go if we can, otherwise we'll answer them at the end. Please note that this session will be recorded and then posted on the Nursing Student Affairs Canvas site. You can also find a lot of the application resources on the Canvas site as well. I will provide the link to the Canvas site in our chat right now, in case you are not already a part of that Canvas group. And to start, my name is Katie Knack. I am an academic advisor in the College of Nursing for students whose last names start A through L, as well as honors, NEP, and then UWM branch, our UWM branch campuses. I'll also have Donna Weir pop on and introduce herself, and then she will take it away.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Donna Weir. I'm one of the advisors in the College of Nursing. For those of you who don't know, I advise students in the alphabet from M through Z and all second degree students, as well as students in the MN program. So we are here to talk about applying to the professional major. First of all, it's important for you to know exactly what it is that you're applying for. So we want to give you some brief details on that so that you've got that in your understanding. So many students, as I'm talking to them in their preparation to the major, say a comment such as, I can't wait to get in the major when it's going to get easier. No, that will not be the case. Know that it is very rigorous. Once you get into the professional major, you will have 62 credits divided out over those 4 semesters, 16 credits in each of the first 2 semesters, 15 in the last 2. And they are very, very rigorous courses. So plan accordingly. Make sure to keep your work hours to a minimum. We recommend not working more than 20 hours a week, and some of you, to be successful, are going to need to even cut your hours more than that. Just know the amount of time that you will be working on your courses. There's usually about 300 pages of reading a week for each, not each of your courses, but each of the weeks of the semester. So that typically is more reading than you're accustomed to doing right now. So do make sure to plan for that, as well as there's lots of group projects and papers that need to be written. And you spend time in the Nursing Learning Resource Center learning all the different skills that you need to know, the hands-on things. So there's lots of time commitment, as well as the courses are just more challenging because you are going to be in what's called a concept-driven program. So you're not just there to memorize facts and spew them out. You are there to really be able to use what you're learning. And so the questions on your exams are going to be what we call NCLEX style, which is the licensing exam that you take at the end of the program. And you will need to be able to answer those higher level questions where you're applying the content that you've learned in those more complicated questions. They tend to be more scenario based. You've got this patient with these complicating factors and these illnesses and these drugs, and what do you do first as a nurse? There's a lot of check all that apply type of questions. And so many times students tell me, well, I got it down to 2 answers and I checked the wrong one. You need to be able to do that higher level thinking. So there's lots of resources to help you with that, but know that it is going to be very concept driven, not just fact driven. Yes, there's a certain amount of memorization, but it goes well beyond that in your learning. Your clinical starts out with 9 hours a week. You will have 1 day a week at the clinical site. It will be on a Tuesday or a Thursday. Your classes will be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So know that that is also something that you'll be doing. And then there's something called guided practice, where you learn the different skills in the Nursing Learning Resource Center. Hopefully by then we'll be back face-to-face in the NLRC. And then you test out of those skills so that you can use them at the clinical sites. So lots of things coming in the professional major, and it helps you to be able to plan for that. I say all of this, about how rigorous it is, but I'll tell you, 99% of the people are extremely successful in the program. Lots of resources to help you along the way, but also it's a lot of work on your part, so be prepared for that.
Okay, thanks, Donna. All right, so we're going to start reviewing the prerequisites and academic policies for the program. So make sure to note that there were a couple of changes about a year and a half ago, but many of you should be aware of these. So the minimum academic requirements. You must earn a minimum grade of C in the prerequisite nursing courses. Earning a C- or lower in any prerequisite course is considered a failure and needs to be repeated. A single required course can only be repeated one time, and no more than a total of 2 required courses can be repeated. That being said, you also don't want to only just earn a C in all of your prerequisite classes, because that's an average GPA of 2.0, and you need a minimum nursing GPA of 2.75 and a minimum science GPA of 2.75. So to get a little bit further into these, prerequisite basics, one of the things that students are typically a little fuzzy on is the repeat policy. So to give you an example, if, for example, in Nursing 101, the first time you took it, you earned a grade of D, you would have one more chance to take that class again and earn a grade of C or better. If you didn't earn a C or better on your second attempt, you would be considered ineligible for the professional nursing major. However, if on your second attempt you earned, say, a B+, you would have eligibility, and when it comes down to the calculation of your GPAs, we would use the better grade. We do not average them. However, say, for example, in a later term, you end up earning a D in Anatomy and Physiology 1 and a C- in English 102, that would be a total of 1, 2, 3 repeats, and you are only allowed a maximum of 2 repeats in the required prerequisite courses. And then again, that would exceed our repeat policy, making you ineligible for the professional nursing major. Now, if that happens to you, there is an appeal process, and you would talk to your academic advisor, either Donna or myself. But those repeats do stay on your record for 10 years. So you really want to try and avoid them if you can. Also because there is a significant number of points lost in the rubric for admission when you earn a repeat. So there's a loss of 2 points for a single repeat and a loss of 5 points for a total of 2 repeats. Again, you can get admitted with repeats. However, it does bring your cumulative score down a little bit. So you want to try and stay away from those if possible. Again, it's important to note that these are the minimum requirements. Just meeting the minimums does not mean you get in. Admission to the professional major is competitive and not guaranteed. So while the minimum in order to be eligible is, minimum GPA to be eligible is a 2.75 nursing and science GPA, on average, students who are submitting really strong applications are earning closer to a 3.3 to 3.5 or higher in their nursing and science GPAs. That said, I always tell students, if you are eligible, so purely academically eligible, I say apply, because we never know what the application pool average is going to be until after the application deadline. However, when you are looking at what your GPAs are and where your academics are when you're going into application, obviously shoot for the stars. You want to do the absolute best you can, get into those top point categories where possible. When we do our academic evaluation of your pre-nursing courses, for the fall application, your academic evaluation is completed based on what you have completed by the end of the winter 2021 semester. So, although you may have remaining required prerequisite courses that you're taking in the spring or summer, those classes, while they need to be completed within these academic minimum requirement policies, so a C or better and maintaining a minimum nursing and science GPA, how your academics are going to be evaluated on the admission rubric is going to be based on where your academic evaluation is by the end of the winter 21 term. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. So when it comes to the GPA, a lot of students are asking, what's included in that GPA calculation? So we take two GPAs, the pre-nursing GPA and the science GPA. There are a total of 14 total prerequisite nursing classes. So when we calculate the pre-nursing GPA, we are calculating the grades earned in all 14 prerequisites, or those that are completed by the end of the winter of 2021. The science GPA is calculated based on just the 7 sciences. So obviously the committee wants to know, how is this student doing on average in our prerequisite classes? However, the committee also knows that how you perform in the sciences are a huge indicator as to whether or not you will be successful in the professional major. So they take kind of a sub-GPA from that nursing GPA and they extract those sciences and take a separate GPA. It's important to note this because as you're looking at these classes, those science classes hold a lot of credit to them. Some of them are 4 to 5 credits and they can have a huge impact on your GPAs. So when you're taking your Chem 101 class, it's important to note that what grade you earn in that class is going to impact both your nursing GPA and your science GPA. And as a 5-credit class, it's going to hold a lot of weight. In comparison, your nursing 102 class is only going to impact your pre-nursing GPA, and as a 2-credit class, it's going to hold a bit less weight. While still important, it is important to notice those different weights. These are the typical classes accepted for the GPA calculation. However, sometimes we do accept equivalents to these classes. For example, if you are an honors student, you may have taken Nursing 380 in place of Nursing 101 and 102. We would use that grade earned from those equivalent courses in the GPA calculation. If you're a transfer student, we might use, whatever course transferred in for that course. Other things we might do, say, for example, you took Psych 101 early in your education and you earned a C in the class, which meets the minimum requirement. However, it wasn't great for your GPA. And later on, you decided to take an additional psychology course and you earned an A in that class. We're going to use the better grade in the calculation of your GPA. Now, you can't double dip within the pre-nursing classes. So for example, if you took a psych class for your social science elective and you did better in that than you did in your Psych 101, I wouldn't use the better grade from that psych if you only, if you're using that initially for your social science elective. However, if there was an additional class that you had taken outside of those 14 prerequisites to meet that could improve that GPA, we will do that. Ultimately, Donna and I are working in your best interest. So if it's going to help you, we'll use that other class, but only if it does indeed meet the requirement. If you have any questions about where your GPA stands, there are some resources on Canvas that help you calculate your GPA. But when you're meeting with Donna and I, we do kind of go over this with you. I know in my student appointments, we discuss your transcript evaluations to kind of help you see where you're at and kind of go through hypothetical scenarios to see, the difference between earning a B in Chem 101 versus a B+. I highly encourage all of you that after this meeting, you go and you practice calculating your GPAs because as of right now, you are mid-semester. You should have a pretty good idea of what your grades are and practice calculating your GPAs based on those grades. If your GPAs are not where you want them to be, you still have a good number of exams and your finals to improve, and that can potentially get you a couple of extra points in the admission rubric. The next question is, how do I calculate my GPA? Donna, take it away.
Help if I have it off of mute. I'm talking away and okay, so how do I calculate my GPA? There are steps that you go through. So if you look at the chart to the left here, you find the point equivalent for the letter grade. So say you're looking at a B+ that you have in micro. The B+ you see is worth 3.33 points. It is a 4-credit class, so you would multiply your point equivalent by the number of credits in the class, and you would get 13.32. You add the total number of credits that you would have in all of your courses that are counted in the GPA, And then you would add the total number of your grade points, again, that are counted in the GPA. And you divide the total number of grade points by the total number of credits that you have. And that's where you come up with your GPA. We go out to 4 points. So it would be a 3.333 for a B plus if you had B pluses in all of your courses. Granted, that's really rare to happen. I don't think I've ever seen it happen, but we would go out to that third digit past the decimal point. So just be aware of that.
Something else to keep in mind is that for your graduation requirements, you have your math and English competencies, your general education requirements, and prerequisites. So for example, many of you have had to take Chem 100 as a prerequisite to Chem 101. It's important to note that that Chem 100 class or your Math 105 or your English 101, those may have been prerequisites. However, they are not included in the calculation of your nursing and science GPAs because they are not actually included in those 14 prerequisites for the nursing program. So those classes would not be calculated into these GPAs, just the 14 prerequisites that we outlined on the previous slide.
And if you repeat a course, the higher grade is counted in the GPA.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so moving on, we're going to talk about the timeline of kind of where you're at, well, let's just say the entire program. So since you started here at UWM or since you changed your major, you have been working on your prerequisites or you've been in pre-nursing. Pre-nursing consists of working on your prerequisite coursework, your general education requirements, as well as you've been volunteering, getting work experience, leadership experiences, and really developing your holistic application to the professional nursing major. At this time, we are here in November, and the application is open. As of yesterday, the online application is now open, and it will be due on January 2nd, 2021 by 5:00 p.m. Something important to note is that there are a lot of legal holidays, and the university has a mandatory furlough day leading up to that deadline, as well as that January 2nd is a Saturday. So something I'm recommending to my students is that if you have any questions, please try and email them to us. I'm recommending for myself before December 23rd because I celebrate the holidays at the end of December. And if you have any questions or any technological issues that need to be troubleshot, I want to make sure I have time to answer your questions. So pay attention to that deadline. At 5:00, the application closes. There will be no late applications accepted. So the best time to submit your application is likely going to be after finals, but before the holidays if possible. You can submit earlier. Often when we see students submit too early, they often come to us saying, oh my goodness, I forgot to add this one thing. Can I resubmit an application? We really only want to see one application per person. If there's extenuating circumstances, you can contact your advisor and we will work with you. But give yourself time to finish your finals and then really complete that application after finals, but submit in due time before the deadline. After that January 2nd deadline, Donna and I are given a list of all students who submitted an application. So we split up that list and we start your academic evaluation. On the online application, you tell us what classes you're planning to take in the winter, spring, and summer. If you're taking a winter class, we will hold off on completing your application, your academic evaluation, until after those final grades are submitted for the winter term. But as soon as that final grade, you get that final grade, if you're taking a class outside of UWM, make sure you send that to us as soon as possible so we can finish that evaluation. All applications for students who are not taking winter classes will complete your evaluation. If there are any issues that we see or if there's any missing information, Donna and I will reach out to you via email. So please remember to keep checking your email over winter break because we will have strict deadlines that if we need additional information, we'll set a deadline. If you don't submit the additional academic records that we need by then, your application may be marked as ineligible. We really don't want that to happen. To make sure we have all of the records beforehand, be sure to send any external transcripts where you may have taken classes elsewhere, if you haven't already, be sure to send official transcripts to UW-Milwaukee admissions so that those records can be posted on your official UWM transcripts if they're not already. If they're already on there, don't worry about it. But say, for example, a class at MATC this summer and you still haven't sent the official transcript to UWM admissions, make sure you send that before the January deadline, just to make sure we have all the records we need. Once all academic evaluations are completed, eligible applicants will be notified, I'd say probably in like one of the last days of January. They will be notified to schedule an interview and essay. So if you meet those minimum academic requirements of, C or better in your prerequisite classes, minimum 2.75 GPAs, you don't exceed the repeat policy, and any remaining prerequisite classes are scheduled to be taken in the spring or summer before the start of the fall semester, you'll be invited to the interviews and essay. Interviews and essay will actually be taking place virtually, and those will be in mid-February. Following the interviews and essay comes the hardest part, because decision letters are sent out via email at the end of March, early April. And unfortunately, you really don't hear anything from February through when those decision letters go out, and that's the hardest part, so we really appreciate your patience. Decision emails are sent out, followed by a hard copy letter. Following those decisions, we will have what we call the I'm in, now what meeting. We will go through all of the next steps. So, health requirements, background checks, drug tests, what to expect in the professional major, etc. In August, we have a clinical orientation right before the semester starts. By the end of that summer semester, all of your pre-nursing coursework must be completed within academic policy. If you have done all that and you've met all the requirements that we have outlined in the I'm in now what meeting, you would start the professional nursing major in the fall of 2021. The professional major, as Donna laid out, is 2 years or 4 semesters, and you would be looking at graduating in May of 2023. Okay, now we're going to have Donna talk a little bit more about the application.
So the application itself is very holistic in nature. The first step that you will do is go to the online site. Best to use Firefox. I'm not sure why, but that's what they tell us. And go to the site that you see here on this slide. That is where you will find the application. This includes, obviously, demographics, name, address, high school, those kinds of things. And then you will also be explaining your experiences. It's going to ask you about your work experiences, your volunteer, your life experiences, those kinds of things, as well as how COVID might have impacted you. So what we recommend strongly is writing this out in a Word document and then uploading into this application. This is all very important information. We have had students who have left this blank and you end up with 0 points if you don't answer this question, and the likelihood of getting in with 0 points in any section of the application is very slim. So do make sure to answer all of these questions, answer them honestly. We may be contacting a certain percentage of the applicants, not references, but their contacts from their volunteer and work experiences, just to make sure that you have had those experiences. Remember, it is due by Saturday, January 2nd of 21 at 5 p.m. As Katie said earlier, get your application in early. We are not available in those last couple of days before January 2nd, and if you have problems with how the system's working, or you have a question on one of the things that you need to be answering and you're not understanding something, it's too late at that point. So make sure to get it done earlier versus later so that we are available to help you. The yellow page that Katie has gone to here on the on the program, you see it's done with excuse me, pull down questions where you can answer. You're going to choose either Milwaukee, Waukesha, or Parkside as to where it is that you want to be doing clinical. You can only apply to one. You cannot apply to more than one. And then answer these questions very clearly. There is a information sheet that's available to you on Canvas and on our website that can help you with understanding things to be included here. You can use whatever format you want. There's no requirement for specific format. It's up to you if you double space or single space, all of that kind of stuff. It really doesn't matter. But you're limited in words to 400 words per each of these sections. And I recommend using up to 400 words and give us all the information that you feel would be pertinent. I tell all my students that if there's something about you that you say, if they knew this about me, they'd want me in their program, make sure it's in here in writing somewhere. Okay. So we're looking for leadership experiences. We're looking for experiences with other cultures and other people who are different than you are. We're looking for just a variety of different experiences, be it work or volunteer. And I know I'm hearing from some of my students who are struggling in getting volunteer experiences. We do have some information on our website about virtual experiences that you can do. We had that recent thing that went out to help people with COVID testing. But there's lots of different things that you can do. They don't have to be healthcare related, but best if you have something that's healthcare related in any of these categories, work, volunteer, or leadership. But you don't have to, not to be eligible. We do not require you to be a CNA to apply. So look at these different things and make them as strong as you can. Again, writing them in a Word document and then uploading them into the system. You can only use this application once, as Katie has said, so don't plan on filling out one question and then coming back later for filling out another question. You can't do that. You have to do it all at one sitting. So if you write everything out and then upload into the website, it's going to be much better for you, not having to just type everything in as you're going. It'll give you a better opportunity to write a stronger answer for each of these questions and to really pull all your thoughts together. You can easily see the questions. Again, those will be on the information that is given to you when you look at the sheet that's on both the website and on the Canvas site. That will help you in seeing all those different things. And then when you get down to the bottom, you sign it. So make sure to do that as well. That will be very, very important for you. And they want to make sure that you're not a robot, those kinds of things. So you type things in at the bottom and then you hit submit. And that's how you enter the first phase of that application. Okay. Again, Katie and I are available to answer any questions that you have regarding that, as long as you do it in a timely fashion. Don't email us on Christmas Day. We're not going to answer. Okay.
Something I would like to add to that as well. You can access this link. You can click on the link to the application as many times as you want. But as Donna said, if you go in and type in information or about your experiences and then you exit out, it is not going to save. So our recommendation is to go onto the Canvas site or onto the website, which I can show you here. Donna, can you see the Canvas site?
Yes.
Okay, so there's the Canvas site. You can see the admission application guidelines. You can also find them when you're applying to the professional major website on the general UWM website. You can find these resources here. These admission application guidelines, everything that is on that online application we put into this form right online so that you can copy and paste this right into Microsoft Word or whatever you use, and that you can type it into Word, put it in gradually, save it to your desktop, and come back later. And when you are ready to submit, go to the application, and then you can copy and paste into these boxes when you're ready. The nice thing is too, Word, you can do spell check, you can do word counts, all those good things. While you're in the application, you can use these boxes to expand as necessary. But when you're all done, then you can click submit. And when it doesn't send you an immediate confirmation email, that is submitted, your confirmation email is sent out from an actual person. It's not sent out through a system, so it's not going to come to you immediately for a couple of days. But you will know that you submitted your application successfully because this application page will come back completely blank, but at the very top up here, it will say application successfully submitted in green lettering. Okay, so thank you for your patience in getting that confirmation email from Lynn. But any of these resources that you might want to use to help you prepare, you can find them here on the Canvas site or on the UWM webpage. We will also put this recorded session on the Canvas site for you. Okay. Can you see the presentation again, Donna?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so this rubric that you see here is very important. Now, it's a exercise in eyesight for me, actually, because of how tiny it is. But I have a hard copy right in front of me, which is helpful. So the things that you need to note is, first of all, it's divided into, you get 100 points for your application. Okay, divided into 50 points for quantitative, 50 points for qualitative. Of all the applicants to the program, I've never seen someone get 100 points. Nobody yet has gotten everything absolutely right. So just know that. Yes, you want to get as close as possible, but likely to get 100 points, not likely. So if you look at the GPA section, as we have been alluding to, if you have your GPA, remember it has to be a minimum of 275. So anything below 275 does not meet the standard, and you would be ineligible, and you would get an email from either Katie or myself saying thank you for applying, but you're not eligible. If you're between a 275 and a 329, you get 12 points for your GPA. If you're between a 3.3 and a 4.0, you get 15 points. Then for the science GPA, if you're between a 275 and a 329, you get 12 points. And if you're between a 3.3, no, I'm using an old one. So sorry about that. So if you're between a 275 and a 299, you get 10 points. If you're between a 3.6 and a 3, or Katie,
a 3.0 and a 3.33, you have 14 points. 3.31 to 3.5, you get 17 points, and 3.51 to 4.0, 20 points.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so it's divided out a little bit more just because we know how rigorous those sciences are. Then there are 7 sciences that have to be completed. If you have 5 of those sciences completed prior to the end of January, so winterim counts for that, you would get 5 points. If you have 4 sciences done, you would get 4 points, and down from there, 3, 2, 1, 0. You wouldn't be applying if you didn't have any sciences done. And we're talking successfully completed with a C or better. So the most points you can get in that category is 5 points. Most people have between 3 and 5, depending on how many sciences they have done. But know that nutrition, BMS 332, biomedical sciences 332, is available over the winterim, and so some students are taking it then to give them an additional point in that application. Then, as far as repeats go, you are limited to the number of repeats that you can have, as Katie has talked about before. And remember, this applies for courses that you have a C minus or below in. A C or better does not count against a repeat for this requirement or for the College of Nursing. So if you have no repeats, you get 10 points. If you have one repeat, you get 8. And if you have 2 or more, you have 5 points in that category. So that's the way that would be divided out. And then we used to require the TEAS test. We no longer do. So some people are still asking me about that. So that is not on this rubric or this requirement that anymore. So then that's the 50 points that you could get for the quantitative, depending on how many sciences you have done, where your GPA falls, whether you have any repeats or not. Then you go into the qualitative, which is more of that experiential section. And for the qualitative, the part that you put on your application, that yellow page that we were at previously, where you're writing about your experiences and you're looking for accountability, responsibility, leadership, experiences with people in other cultures, those kinds of things. The most you can get in that section is 15 points, and then 12 points or 8 points, depending on how the faculty would score that. So that's where you would stand there. And then there's something called social geographic factors. Your social geographic factors, you can get up to 5 points in that section if you have 3 or more factors included in, 4 points if you have 2 or more factors in, and 0 points if you have less than that. And so what we're looking at as far as those factors are, if you are a first-generation college student, low socioeconomic standing, Milwaukee Public School graduate, resident of Milwaukee County, resident of Racine Kenosha County, or if you're from a rural community, which is less than 2,500 people in population. So those are the sections that would be included there. And then the writing sample is your in-person essay, which, remember, that's not the stuff you put on the computer when you're applying. This is a separate essay where you will write based on some type of a scenario that they gave you. And we're looking for communication and critical thinking here. We're looking at your writing abilities, your ability to really get your thoughts across, and again, experiences with people from other cultures, all of those kinds of things come in. And with that, you can get a maximum of 15 points or 12 points if you meet the standard, but it's not as strong, or 8 points if it really needs to be developed, if it's weaker, okay? And then the short interviews that you would be going through, you can get up to 25 points for those interviews. Depending on how many points you get, you're within a range. So you can get 15 points for the highest exceed standard, excellent interviews, 12 points for a little bit below that, or 8 points if you are on the weaker side of those interviews that you're doing, okay? So that would be the interviews that you would be getting, anywhere in there. And so that all adds up to your 100 points, okay? We look at all of those categories, and so it's very holistic. So you want to make sure that your application is strong as possible in all of those areas. To prepare for the essay and for the short interviews, I recommend that you be aware and understanding of the core values of the College of Nursing that you can easily find on our website, or if you happen to be in the building, they're posted all over the place. But the core values are very much rooted in those questions that you will be looking at. And then practice just answering questions in a logical, structured type of format that's going to help you with those things. Okay. Any questions?
No. Yeah, go ahead and put your questions in the chat if you have them. I've asked students who have gone through the application process, what do you wish you would have known now that you've gone through this? Many of them have said, I wish I would have started volunteering sooner, because your volunteer work-life and leadership experience is whatever you've completed up until January 2nd when you've submitted that application. So many of them, they want to, they wish they would have started sooner, because having volunteer experiences that you've completed since you've been in college are going to be much stronger than those that may have been completed before college and, say, high school. Something of note, the writing sample, even though on the rubric it does say in person, due to COVID-19, we will be having the essay online, and we'll get into that a little bit more soon. Okay, we have a student question who is confused about the sociogeographic factors. How do we include this on the application? So the sociogeographic factors that information is gathered somewhat internally. So your socioeconomic status is determined based on your financial aid. The first generation college student, you determine that on your application, where you grew up, so the address that you put. So that where you went to high school is typically your, you put for your mailing address. What are the other ones, Donna? Remind me.
If you're from a rural community, from Racine, Kenosha County or Milwaukee County, we would all get from your permanent address.
Oh, and a lot of that with your high school too, of where you went to high school, where you live, that's on your transcript. So we have access to what high school you graduated from and what town you were in at that time. So in order to determine where you graduated high school, and your town of residence, that's where we get that information. Do all students with an 80% or higher get into the program? No. Let's see here. I think if we actually go to the next slide, we'll get into that question just a little bit. But for the fall semester, we only admit 72 students. We do have a wait list, but on average, about 150 students apply. So that percentage doesn't really apply. It's really ultimately that 72 students are admitted. When filling out work and volunteer experience on the application, do you prefer these things to be in a list to save room or in paragraph form? I basically don't know how professional to make it look, as well as not exceeding the word limit. Being concise is definitely to your advantage. It does not need to be in paragraph form. It does. My recommendation is more of a resume format, being direct, because you are limited in the number of words. Use your words wisely. If you need assistance with this, unfortunately, Donna and I cannot help, and we cannot review your application just because that might invoke some bias. However, you can work on your application with your peers. You can talk to mentors, faculty. You can go to the Career Planning and Resource Center, meet with a career counselor, and have them review your application. The CPARC is also a great place to go to practice maybe some mock interview questions and get used to interviewing virtually. Their website is careerplan@uwm.edu. I'll provide that in the chat. And they do virtual appointments. So they are a great resource to help you prepare for this. There's also the Writing Center if you want someone to review your application. Any other suggestions, Donna?
No, just really, maybe even family members practicing, the more formal type of interview would be very good to do. And one thing that they're looking for when they're looking at experiences is longevity. If you've done something, for 4 or 5 months, it's going to mean more than if you did it once. Okay. Faculty understand longevity with the average age of the people applying to the program does not mean 10, 12 years. we're looking for something more realistic, to, 6, 7, 8 months, somewhere in there. But we're also understanding that COVID has impacted a lot of things this year. So do make sure to explain if you had any unusual circumstances with COVID where you were volunteering and it was cut short because of, COVID and all of us, with the limitations that we've been facing. Make sure to include those things, or if you've had, major crises of some kind or difficulties, those are things to be included in that work-life experience area as well. Again, also any accomplishments, achievements, awards of different kinds, those would be things to bring up as well. Those things that make you stand out in a crowd.
That makes a good point, that even if it doesn't necessarily fit into these specific categories, if you feel that it is an important piece of who you are and, needs to be considered in your application, be sure to add that. The committee only knows what you tell them. So use all 400 words of every section. This is your time to show who you are and why you deserve to be in this program. And again, important to note for the volunteer work life and leadership, it doesn't have to be healthcare related. It can be anything. It can be environmental, educational, general volunteering, for like food pantries. I have students who are, making holiday decorations for folks in nursing homes. Some students are volunteering and caring for elderly neighbors and volunteering to, help get their house ready for winter. There's all kinds of things. It doesn't have to be healthcare related. Healthcare related experiences do have extra strength to them, but all experiences count. Okay, I'm going to move on. For the interviews, all interviews with all applicants will be held virtually. So UWM the interviews will take place the week of February 15th through the 18th. For the UW Parkside, UWM at Waukesha, and UWM at Washington County cohorts, those interviews will take place the week of February 22nd through the 25th. Scheduling will be done once we can confirm eligibility of all applicants. Also, this interview will take place on Microsoft Teams. It'll be a 30-minute interview on Teams. You'll meet with 2 to 3 interviewers. They'll each have a question, and you'll have, about 6 minutes per question. It's important to note that if an interviewer is asking you additional questions, that they're kind of asking probing questions, they're trying to help you, okay? That they might have not gotten to the full extent of the answer they're looking for. So don't get nervous if the interviewer is asking you what feels like more than 2 to 3 questions. They're just trying to help you along a little bit. The number one piece of advice from previous students who have gone through the interview process is to breathe. Part of this holistic admission process is not only to see, have an evaluation of who you are as a student and what your experiences are, but we want to know who you are as a human being. Are you going to make a good nurse? Are you going to make a good classmate, someone that's really going to help provide a unique perspective in the classroom? So this interview is really to get an idea of your values, your experiences, and who you are as a human and why you're going to make a great nurse. So keep that in mind. Take a deep breath. If interviewing like this makes you nervous, practice. And make sure you're practicing out loud. Practicing it in your head, your responses in your head, and then versus actually saying them out loud is very different. So if you have a family member, a friend, somebody that you can practice mock interview questions with, I highly recommend it, and it'll make you feel more confident going into the process. The writing sample is going to take place on Saturday, February 27th, 2021. So save this date in your calendar. There's a 1-hour time limit. You're going to be sent a link. You click on the link at that time on February 27th. You have 1 hour to complete the essay prompt, and that's it. If we realize that this, I believe this conflicts with a Jewish holiday, if that is a concern for you, please just contact Donna or myself, and we'll work with you. Other ways to prepare for the writing sample. Donna, any suggestions?
Not really. It's really a matter, again, of making sure you're aware of the core values of the College of Nursing, and practice your writing. You know, the writing sample, typically you're going to be writing in the typical college format, which is, a thesis, a body conclusion, at least 3 supporting statements, those kinds of things. Be thinking of those very, very basics of writing, but also be thinking of, how can I make this stand out? How can I make this strong? Make sure to include examples in whatever you're writing, and watch spelling and grammar, those kinds of things. It helps that you're writing it online so that you would be able to use those kinds of resources. So, those would be the biggest things.
Suggestions I've had from prior students who have gone through this process is it's 1 hour, so manage your time wisely. Take 2 to 3 minutes to read the essay prompt a couple of times. Give yourself maybe about 12 minutes to do a brief outline. Give yourself about 30 minutes to actually write your essay, and then have some time at the end to review. The core values that are being assessed in this section in the essay are critical thinking and communication. So when you have that essay prompt, keep in mind critical thinking. So don't just answer it simply just to get the response out. Use your time, really think through the problem, and as Donna said, incorporate examples, look at it from different perspectives. Again, this is your time to put all your cards out there on the table. So we have a question of how long word-wise is the essay. I believe they don't actually have a length, it's just a time limit. But you want to be concise and to the point. However, you also don't want to be too short. So make sure that you're really answering the question thoroughly, answering it from multiple perspectives, and again, using that critical lens of, maybe you might answer it from one perspective, which is your own, but then who else's perspective are you maybe missing when you're answering that question. You also do not know the essay beforehand. For all of the interview and essay questions, you do sign a non-disclosure form at the beginning that you also guarantee that you will not be sharing and talking about what the question is, so that all students have an equal ability to answer these questions without having prepared for them.
So, as we've mentioned a couple of times, for the UWM campus, we're looking at admitting 72 students for the Milwaukee campus for fall. We usually have about 20 people on the waiting list, and any remaining applicants would be denied. We keep the waiting list short for students to get into the program off of the waiting list. People who are admitted need to either deny their spot, become ineligible, or decide to go part-time. Part-time is definitely an option that we offer to you at UWM, and always something to be talking about with your advisor if you need to be working more than 20 hours a week or have family circumstances or something that would warrant that part-time route through the program. So know that that's available to you. But 72, 20, and then the rest are denied. At Parkside in the fall semester, and they only admit in the fall, they admit 40. They usually have about 5 to 8 applicants on the waiting list, and anyone else, again, is denied. And with this new program that we're starting out at Waukesha, Washington County combined, we're looking 8 to 16, depending on how many strong eligible applicants we have, with 2 to 3 students on a waiting list and anybody else denied. So that's what we're looking at for our numbers for the fall semester. And you will be notified of admission. Our goal is usually spring break, but you never know. So, especially with COVID, so it could be as late as April. Know that, hopefully at the latest by April 1st.
On average, each semester about 150 students apply to UWM. At Parkside, they're on average about 55 to 60 students apply for the fall semester. For the branch campuses, because we have the new cohort out at Waukesha, and this is the first semester that we're ever offering the cohort out at Waukesha, we actually don't know what the average is going to be. But so if a student had asked what the percentage range of accepted students in the past is it really depends on each application cycle. So again, those are averages. Know that every application cycle is different. So my recommendation is if you are academically eligible, apply. Okay. Obviously, do your absolute best to get the most points you possibly can and put forward the absolute best application that's within your sphere of influence. But know that the fall semester is quite competitive for UWM.
So when you find out whether you get in or not, we will want to meet with you in one way or the other. If you are not admitted or placed on the waiting list, we would like to meet with you individually to talk about what happened, where was your weakness, what can you do going forward, how can you build a stronger application. And those would be individual meetings with both Katie and myself, and you would get a letter instructing you what to do with that. If you are admitted and also on the waiting list, we want you to attend what we call our I'm in, now what meetings, which talk about the additional things that you need to do as far as getting ready to start into the major with very, very specific deadlines. These include things like health requirements, drug screening, background check, CPR, getting your uniform, all those kinds of things we talk about at that meeting. So if you're on the waiting list or if you're denied, we want you to attend those meetings. Otherwise, we would meet with you individually to discuss your application and what you can do moving forward. So one way or the other, Katie and I want to see you.
That being said, if you are denied, you can absolutely apply again, and we encourage you to apply again, but definitely meet with Donna or myself to review your application and ways to improve on the next application. If you have applied before, you do not lose points in the rubric process for having applied once before. It does not look negatively against you. The committee does not see that you have already applied. Okay. So we definitely recommend applying again. You are not limited to number of times that you can apply to UWM's College of Nursing program. Okay, we have a question. With this new program at Waukesha, if not enough people apply at that campus, can a UWM student possibly get one of their spots?
That would be possible depending on what would happen. What we would have done in the past is taken the top person off the waiting list and offered them that seat.
Thank you, Donna. Okay. If you are accepted, as Donna alluded to, some items to expect are that there will be some health requirements that will be due by August 1st, 2021, the background check, a drug test, and then a CPR certification. So know that if you are accepted, these are things kind of coming down the pipeline. So when it comes to that knowing that background check is going to be coming up, I know with COVID, a lot of you guys are staying at home already, but if you're getting antsy, just make sure you're being safe and using good judgment. Okay. That being said, if you have any concerns about something that might be on your background check and might impact your ability to nurse, you are welcome to talk to Donna and I about that now if you would like to, if you have concerns and you want to know how that might impact your ability to be a practicing nurse.
And deadlines are firm. You miss the deadline for any of these things, you lose your seat. So you don't want to mess with that. And that's why we meet with you to explain so that you fully understand. Then cost to anticipate, in addition to tuition, which we don't know what it's going to be for next year. That we don't find out until the summer usually. But there are other costs to anticipate. The books, as well as ATI fees. ATI is a program that you use throughout the nursing program. It has skills modules in it. It has NCLEX prep information. It has NCLEX tests that you take throughout the program. Lots of things that you utilize it for. Excuse me. Combining that with the cost of books, you're going to be looking at about $1,600 to $1,700 for especially the first 3 semesters of the program. So if you get admitted to the program, I would recommend that you do an addendum to your FAFSA so that that can be included with those costs. Then Your uniform, you're looking at usually about $60 for both pieces of the uniform, top and bottom. The scrubs that you need. You can get more than one set. Again, that would double that cost if you got two sets. So we get the uniforms through Gloria K. And so that's the cost to expect there. Shoes, it depends. You want to have shoes that you wear only at the clinical setting so that you're not traipsing home different diseases and illnesses and bacteria that you encounter at the clinical setting. And they can be either uniform shoes or athletic shoes, but they have to be either all white, all black, or all navy. And then you need a stethoscope. The stethoscope has to have a dual head, and that stethoscope either well in the range of about $50 to $100 in that range, and the badge that you get has your picture on it, and that is about $5 for that badge. Then differential tuition is about $31 more per credit, and that covers additional books that you get loaned out to you through the NLRC, as well as lots of equipment that you use for different courses. And again, in the NLRC is where most of that funding is processed through. And we ask you to serve on what's called the Black and Gold Committee. And that's the committee that determines where those funds are put. It's all for the benefit of the students specifically. And it usually comes up to about $500 a semester in that range, depending on how many credits you're taking each semester. And then there is an online course fee for one course in that third semester of the program. So whatever that fee is at that time, just be prepared that that will be in addition to tuition. So that's what you're looking at for additional costs. Something just to anticipate as you're preparing for fall of 21.
Okay, so if you guys have any questions, please feel free to again include them in the chat. Otherwise, you can always contact the appropriate advisor. Again, I myself advise students last names A through L, honor students NEP, as well as our UWM branch campus applicants. Donna advises our UWM students last names M through Z in second degree. Hillary Vara advises our students over at UWM at Parkside. If you want to make an appointment and you're currently one of our advisees, go ahead and use Navigate. If you are not a current student, you can call the front office at 414-229-5047 or send them an email to uwmnurse@uwm.edu. So yeah, any further questions?
Adding a note on that, as far as appointments, I know I prefer that you make a Teams appointment just because then I can share screens with you and it's just a whole lot easier versus a phone appointment. Sometimes, you know, Teams isn't possible for someone, but if it's a Teams appointment, it just seems to be more beneficial, and then we can do those things we would normally be doing in the office if we could see you face to face. So that would be my preference if at all possible.
Absolutely. We also have another info session tomorrow if you want to hear this information again. Otherwise, we will have it on the website. And then another piece is we will be doing I believe we're doing a Q&A session in December. Donna, do you remember the date for that?
Oh, I don't. Let me talk about it.
It'll be posted on Canvas and we will email you about that date. But essentially later on in December when you will be, you know, finalizing your application and, you know, kind of wrapping up your finals, we will have just an opportunity where Donna and myself will just be here on Teams where you can pop in and ask your questions there. Okay. You had a question? Do you mind going back to the slide which explained which classes count as nursing GPA and which count as science? Yes, you can do that.
Katie, it's on December the 18th at noon.
Okay. Okay. So here is the slide with what's included in GPA. Again, all 14 prerequisites are used to calculate your nursing GPA or equivalent courses. For the science GPA, we kind of extract just those 7 sciences or the sciences that are completed at time of evaluation, and we calculate a GPA based on just those 7 sciences. Again, as you saw in that rubric for admission, you can get a maximum of 15 points for your pre-nursing GPA, but up to 20 points for your science GPA. So really do really well finishing up those science classes this semester. Yeah, really practice your GPAs as of right now. If you need any assistance with that, we do have some resources on Canvas, or you can meet with your advisor. Know that it is peak advising season, so it might take a little bit of time to get into a meeting with your advisor, so plan ahead.
One thing to note is if you're repeating a course in the spring or the summer semesters that you already have a grade in, say you have a C- in Chem 101 and you wanted to repeat that in the spring semester, that C- counts in your GPA as we're calculating for the fall semester. So just be aware of that. Anything that's being repeated in the spring or the summer would count in the GPA. We would use that lower grade. Okay.
Well, I don't see any other questions, so feel free to email Donna or myself or Hillary if you're a Parkside student with any of your follow-up questions. Otherwise, check the Canvas site. Donna and I will stay on for a little bit longer to answer any of your questions. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing your application.